Hey, everybody, it's Dave here, Darren over there, where your two old bloggers been commenting publicly on your Minnesota Vikings for over 2.5 decades apiece. It's a lot of time talking about these men in purple. Now, have we had a Vikings week or what? It started out early in the week when we get the announcement of Justin Jefferson's extension. He's locked up now for the next 5 years. We're going to go into that. Also, that Kwesi Adofo-Mensah seems to be cooking this offseason, and he's put together quite a bit in just a relatively short period of time since our season ended last year. Then we're going to get into other happenings within Vikings land, like those sweet new uniforms, the Winter Warriors. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about updates that happened during minicamp. And we're going to talk about N'Keal Harry making that transition from wide receiver to pass-catching tight end. All next on Two Old Bloggers. Let's rock! Vikings First and SKOL presents This Week in Vikings Land with Darren and Dave, your two old bloggers. And welcome everybody, and I want to welcome everybody that's in the chat from Delton, the Drewster, and we have Raymond as well. We have also, who else has chimed in? Daniel, welcome to the show as usual. But first, we postponed this one from 4 to 5 because Darren had a little tennis tournament with his tee. How was that, Darren?
Unsuccessful for me, but I sweated my bag off, and that's always one of the burned a few calories, got the old bones moving. It's okay. It's early in the season. I'm good.
You're good?
Let's go. I won't be good tomorrow.
Well, you didn't roll an ankle or do anything like that, so you're doing pretty good.
No soft tissue injuries from out of this guy.
All right, great. Hey, we had a fantastic week in Vikings land this week. There was tons and tons of stuff that came out, and we're going to get ready to start talking about it with the first one, Theme 1. And if I hit the right button, there we get the music. And why the graphic didn't come up, I have no idea. But getting her done.
Getting her done, like we say in Canada. I was also air drumming to the intro earlier. off camera. But yeah, the Justin Jefferson extension, the big news, and Mike Florio, Pro Football Talk creator, rabid Vikings fan, was right for a change, where he went out and speculated that potentially the Vikings were and Justin Jefferson were going to sign an extension potentially on Monday, and by God, it happened on Monday. And
well, I want to know if is he right, or is he throwing 100 things at the wall and hoping one of them sticks?
Yeah, that's part of it too. Of course, there's lots of things he's thrown against the wall that have not stuck over the years, but he got this one right, and we're happy that he did. News came down on Monday that Jefferson got the 4-year, 140 million, 100 million guaranteed, set the wide receiver market with that, and all's good in Vikings land, hearing that news. And we're not going to get into, it's already been done. I'm not going to get into is this too much to pay for a non-quarterback in the NFL? Spoiler alert, when it's Justin Jefferson, it's not. But I do want to get into it and talk about why getting this done when the Vikings got it done is so important for 2024, for the Vikings in 2024. And the first reason is it obliterates, ends the chatter about the Justin Jefferson extension. When is he going to get signed to an extension? If so, when? And is he going to sign it with the Vikings, or were they going to trade him or something like that? Now that Monday, with the news that Monday came down, that is all done, dusted, not going to have to hear it anymore. Justin Jefferson doesn't have to talk about it. Kevin O'Connell doesn't have to talk about it. Kwesi Adofo-Mensah doesn't have to talk about it. The players don't have to talk about it anymore. All they can do now, they get to focus on the most important thing, and that is hitting mini camp, hitting training camp, and focusing on being the best players that they can be in 2024 and beyond. And for the Vikings, that is a wonderful thing, because that is not, they've avoided what is happening in Dallas and San Francisco right now, where CeeDee Lamb and Brandon Ayuk have missed mandatory minicamp, and they likely won't be at training camp because they have not been signed to extensions by their teams. And so that's a shitstorm that you don't want happening with your teams heading into the 2024 season. The Vikings have not done that. And I think, good on you, Minnesota Vikings, the front office, Justin Jefferson, for getting this done and ending that storyline once and for all. So that's issue number one. Second thing that's really good about it is, I just think it's a great jolt of positivity. We felt it as fans, but as a team, heading into mandatory minicamp, it must have just been awesome for the players, for the franchise, for everybody to see Justin Jefferson run out onto the field Monday for mandatory minicamp, signed, sealed, and delivered, going to be a Viking for the next 5 years. That the whole team, the front office, the coaching staff had to feel great about that. And, when you look at there's been various interviews done with all kinds of players this week, and it's all been lots of smiles, lots of laughs, lots of positivity. Now that is normal for this time of the year, Dave, for all NFL teams except the absolute dregs who know they have no chance at doing anything. But nonetheless, I think if Justin Jefferson had not been signed and not been out there at this mandatory minicamp, I think privately, all those players who are saying, they'd still be saying nice things, but I think privately they'd be kind of wondering, when is Justin Jefferson going to be practicing with us and being part of the team? Is it going to happen in time for the regular season? They might be wondering about the direction of the Vikings, particularly in 2024. And I think especially for the new guys that have just signed on, Blake Cashman, Jonathan Grenard, Andrew Van Ginkel, Shaq Griffin, all of those guys, and the newer, younger players who have just come on in the past year or two, they have to feel good about the direction of the Vikings franchise too, because your best player, again, is signed, sealed, and delivered for 5 years in the prime of his career. And if that hadn't been the case, if you're Jonathan Grenard, you're like, shit, I just left a playoff team with a rising star quarterback. I got my money, but if Justin Jefferson was not in the lineup, he'd have to be wondering, did I make a mistake here? Well, he's not thinking that now, I don't think. And so that is another great thing that getting this extension done now has done for the Vikings. And I think it really sets a great tone for heading into training camp now. You got Justin Jefferson done. You don't have to worry about that. I think the third major thing that this does, and why it was important to get it done now, is Justin Jefferson now gets to work with Sam Darnold and J.J. McCarthy, and actually all the quarterbacks, and get to work. He has not caught a pass hadn't caught a pass until the mandatory minicamp started. He hadn't caught a pass from any of these guys. He hadn't been able to do any kind of work on field with them because he had been away. Well, now that again, that's done, and there's a lot of work to be done, guys. He had, with Kirk Cousins, he had like a connection with Kirk Cousins for 4 years, and they knew each other inside out, and it was a relationship that worked really well for both. But Cousins isn't here now, of course, so that's all gone. Justin Jefferson has to build this up right from the ground up with these new quarterbacks, Sam Darnold and J.J. McCarthy. And now he gets to do that. And these are important things because Sam Darnold and J.J. McCarthy, they've got to learn Justin Jefferson. They got to learn his body language. They got to learn, how does he get out of breaks? What kind of subtle things does he do with his body that signals he's going to cut in, out, go left, right? Where does he like the ball? Where does he not like the ball? And the same thing goes for Justin Jefferson catching passes from Darnold and McCarthy is, he's got to get a feel for, okay, what does the ball look like when it leaves their hands? It's going to be different than with Kirk Cousins. What kind of zip does the ball have when I catch it from those guys? What passes do they, really struggle throwing? What ones do they do well? It's chemistry, Dave, and it's very, very important at pro level, especially the quarterback wide receiver relationship. And now they get to solidify that. It takes time. They've lost some time, but I think that, they're going to be, now they've got 2-3 months to build that up. And hopefully even maybe they'll get to work now because Justin Jefferson doesn't have to worry about his contract. He's set for life. Now he's going to meet up with Darnold and JJ and the other quarterbacks, go to Florida or
he hinted at it.
Yeah. Go to Florida, go somewhere warm. Maybe not, hopefully not too warm because you got to stay hydrated, guys. And work on, just a few days a week of catching again, build that chemistry, build the connection, get to know each other's, how they throw, the body language, the whole thing, work on the ins and outs and the break and the touch and all that stuff. They can now do that, which they weren't going to be able to do until Justin Jefferson signed an extension and was stepping on the grass for real. And so those are three big things. And the other thing is that I think that the extension is also, I think the Vikings, the front office was already had this in place, but it also gives them a better certainty on the salary cap down the road. And like, okay, what do we got to pay? Who have we already paid? And how is that all going to shape out now that Justin Jefferson's major domo contract has been signed? And, how does that impact our salary cap going forward? So big stuff. And let's give the Vikings front office a hand for getting this done.
Hey, I think it's fantastic. And the vibes that came out of out of Egan this week were just sky high. Everybody was just loving it. You had Aaron Jones coming out. He's like, who's going to defend us? We've got number one in JJ. We've got budding superstar in Jordan Addison. We have TJ Hawkinson when he gets back. We have Aaron Jones in the backfield. It's just, you can't cover everybody. It's going to be a prolific offense, and I think that's how they feel about themselves. And as I said on a previous show, thinking they're going to be that good is a step in that direction because they believe and they can manifest being that good. Because if you think you're going to suck, guess what? You're going to suck. And so I think this positive movement, it hit the franchise, it hit the fans, and I think we're all smiling this week because JJ got his. And I'm happy for the young man. He hasn't diva'd out like other wide receivers. He played it correct, and I'm proud of him. I'm glad he's getting his. It's a wonderful thing, and it doesn't put, as I explained on some of the FFSN shows, it doesn't put the Vikings in a bind. All this is calculated, and it's calculated throughout the length of this contract. So I think it's a smart move to have JJ locked up, happy, the rest of the team's happy. You're showing the squad showing you're going to pay for quality talent. That's going to attract even more. I think it's a win-win across the board. And yes, Northfield, a little bit of applause always helps. So,
and I haven't seen anything that's been anything but positive from outside of the Minnesota Vikings fan or media stratosphere about the signing of Justin Jefferson. The overwhelming opinion is that A, Jefferson deserved every penny that he got, and B, the Vikings did the right thing and the only thing by signing him to what they did. And yet they set the market, and this is significantly more than what previous, even Tyreek Hill had signed, and other agent, Brown, the whole thing. You can check out Jason Fitzgerald on Over the Cap. He did a blog on this earlier this week, talking about how big of a contract, and that this is a legitimate $140 million contract. There's not funny money back, put at the end of it, that he's actually earning the 35 million or whatever it is. So it's a big deal. It sets the wide receiver market, but we knew it was going to happen. We knew it was going to get done, and they got it done.
Mm-hmm. And the Northfield says thought it was closer to 85. The initial guarantees 89, just under 89, 88.75, something like that, is the initial guarantee upon signing. Then it goes up to 110 the next year, because there's an extra 30 million plus that rolls into it. He'll have a grand total of, and he's not going to not get that guarantee. It's just when the money hits his account, it's the almost 89 million hit it when he signed that contract, which you got to love it if you're him, watching the account on your phone and suddenly, bing, $89 million, positive. That would be something crazy. But it's a lot of money, yes, but I think it's worth every damn penny. He's literally set records for wide receivers in the history of the NFL, and he deserves it. And by far, I do think he's the best non-quarterback, because he produces more than any other position. And for a defense, you'd say who restricts production more, but he still beats that out. So I think it's great. Drew says JJ's being hungry is a nightmare for the NFL. That it is. And JJ himself talked about, now he's got goals in mind, and they involve the Lombardi. He wants to bring the Lombardi to Minnesota. We couldn't ask for anything more. That's what we want. That's what we all want. So, we shall see. Alan says, if Rick Spielman was GM, we would have had a Super Bowl roster in 3 years. Bynum Darisaw would have been just re-signed for cheap already. Not quite sure about that, Alan, but okay. Thank you, Julie. Very much for joining us today.
I can't say I love you because I'm married, but I do like you.
All right, that brings us to theme 2. The man's been crushing it this offseason.
Well, we'll see what the commenters think about this one, but we're going to talk about the Vikings offseason. We talked about it before, the earlier in the season, or in the offseason. But the Kwesi Adofo-Mensah had a. This was a huge off season for the Vikings. The decisions that Kwesi Adofo-Mensah had to make this off season were just going to impact the Vikings in 2024, but I thought they're going to reverberate for several years after this by what he was going to have to do. And there were, and in no particular order, those signings, those decisions were: decide what to do with Kirk Cousins, decide what to do with Danielle Hunter, get your quarterback of the future, and then sign Justin Jefferson to an extension. And I think that based on what has happened this offseason, Kwesi Adofo-Mensah has crushed the offseason so far for the Minnesota Vikings. And we're going to get into those 4 things. Well, we already got into the 4th one already, but we'll touch on a little bit again. But I think the first one, the Kirk Cousins deal, and deciding what to do with that. I think that the Vikings, they said it all along. They liked Kirk Cousins. They thought he was a very good player. They thought that they could be successful with Kirk Cousins, which they were in 2022. But they also knew that they came up with a price point and also a contract length threshold to which that they were not going to go beyond, and they felt that they had a price point and a length of contract that they felt, if he agrees to this, we think that we can compete. But they weren't going to go beyond that. And they knew that Kirk Cousins, as good a player as he had been, as much as they liked him, he is not a generational talent. He is not a guy that you can afford to have 20% or more of your salary cap expended on and expect that you're going to compete for the Lombardi Trophy, because he needs help, a lot of help. He can't overcome weaknesses on the roster. We've seen that. We saw that in the 6 years that he was here. So when Kirk Cousins' team did not go with the contract, the amount and the threshold that Kwesi Adofo-Mensah was comfortable with, the Vikings let him sign. They let Atlanta pay him. They let him pay him the $100 million for the 4 years, and they moved on. And that was a bit of a controversial decision amongst some, but it was the right decision. And I think that the Vikings general manager deserves a hand, and we're going to use the canned applause once again for that. So that was a very important decision, and one that I think that Kwesi Adofo-Mensah got right in a big way. The second one was Danielle Hunter. Okay. I talked on this show in the past that, back in January or maybe in February, that when we did the positional, looked at the positional, the edge rushers, I was in favor of bringing Danielle Hunter back. Yes, I knew that he turns 30 at the end of October, but I felt that looking at what Khalil Mack, what Leonard Floyd, what Von Miller have done in their 30s, that I felt that Danielle Hunter still could be very productive for another 2 or 3 years. And if you signed him to that kind of a contract, that would, I would be happy with that. And you know what you're getting with Danielle Hunter. Well, Kwesi Adofo-Mensah decided to go another way, and he signed Jonathan Grenard, somebody who's almost 3 years younger than Danielle Hunter. He then not only that, he brought in Andrew Van Ginkel on a shorter deal, and they drafted Dallas Turner, the consensus best edge rusher in the 2024 draft. That's quite a bit of some nice business that Kwesi Adofo-Mensah did. There is some risk there, Dave, of course, because you look at Danielle Hunter, and I think he had 87.5 career sacks in 8 seasons in the NFL. Jonathan Grenard, even though he had 12.5 last year with the Texans, the year before he only had 1.5 sacks, and he struggled with injuries. And he has 23 career sacks in 4 seasons. Has played half the amount of time that Danielle Hunter has, but his sack production has been lower. And so, if you're looking at Grenard and Danielle Hunter as a 1-for-1 comparison, there are some worries there. But again, Grenard's almost 3 years younger than Hunter. He's always been considered a strong run defender, something that Hunter has not been considered by some folks. And he's right now an ascending player. I think that Danielle Hunter, he's going to he had a career high 16.5 sacks last year. I think as he hits his 30s, it's going to be, I don't see him duplicating that or eclipsing that as he gets into his 30s. Yeah, he's going to be productive, but is he going to be that productive? I don't think so. Grenard has a chance to, I think, get better, the fatter stats than what he's had in the previous. He's a bit younger. And I think that he's also cheaper, like over the caps APY, which is like a year by year metric on how much their contracts are worth. They got Hunter signed for less years, but his APY is 24.5 million per average during the time that he's with the Texans under his contract. Grenard's is, I think, 19.5 million. So, and you also got Van Ginkel added onto that, and Turner. So I really like what Kwesi Adofo-Mensah did with our edge rushers, and him adding Gabriel Murphy as an undrafted rookie free agent. So, he might be in the mix too. So I like what he's done with the edge rushers, even though we didn't get Hunter back, which is, was something that I was in favor for, but I like how he attacked it, even though we didn't get Hunter back. The third thing, the quarterback of the future. Okay. Even if Kirk Cousins had been brought back, the Vikings had to do something about drafting a quarterback of the future, because Cousins turns 36 in August. He's not going to play forever, even though he takes care of his body very well. So, going into the draft, we knew that the Bears were not going to. They were set on Caleb Williams. They were not going to trade out of number one. They were going to select him. And they certainly weren't going to trade with the Vikings. So the Vikings never had a shot at Caleb Williams. I don't think they had a shot at Jaden Daniels. The Washington Commies were stuck on him at number 2 the whole time. So that leaves you at number 3. Is there a big difference between Drake May and J.J. McCarthy and Michael Penix and Bo Nix? And out of all those, and particularly, was there a big enough difference between Drake May and J.J. McCarthy that the Vikings, it would have been worth it for the Vikings to trade the King's ransom that the Patriots supposedly wanted, to have somebody, whether the Vikings or anybody else, trade up to 3 to get May? I don't think it is. And so they stayed patient. They waited. They ended up only trading up 1 spot to get McCarthy, their guy, and they get a kid who's 21. He's won everywhere he's been. He's one of the youngest prospects of the quarterback prospects, and great leadership qualities. He gets to work under Kevin O'Connell and Josh McCown. A great situation for him. I think that really, the Vikings, J.J. McCarthy was as good a prospect as they realistically had a chance at getting. So I like what they did there. And this doesn't even mention, I guess, I almost forgot, but not only did Kwesi Adofo-Mensah get those 3 things done, he's also cleaned up our salary cap so that in 2025 and even into 2026, we are looking quite flush in cap space and can add guys as we see fit to the Vikings roster in 2025, when we really think that this team is going to be cooking and ready to challenge for potentially a Super Bowl. So Kwesi Adofo-Mensah had a lot of tough decisions to make this offseason. He made them, and I think they may not all work out. That's the way things go. But, if the edge rushers, if the 3 guys that he acquired, Grenard, Cashman, and Dallas Turner, if they play the way they perform the way that we expect them to, that the way they have at college, at the pro level in previous seasons, they're going to be very good players for us. And I think the quarterback situation, again, with J.J. McCarthy, the eventual guy, they got a great prospect there, very promising one, and a young one, somebody they can build with. And I think that Kwesi Adofo-Mensah had tough decisions to make, but I think he made them. And I think that right now, I think he made the right decisions in all those cases. So again, another big hand for him in getting all this done in the offseason, in what was a huge, huge offseason for the Minnesota Vikings and for him, because if he screws up on these, he'll be looking for a job in 2 or 3 years, as will Kevin O'Connell.
Yep. Well, and other things that people don't, that go below the radar on this. He brought in Josh McCown. Right? Now, part of that's Kevin O'Connell saying, I want Josh McCown. But he brought in Josh McCown to help coach said quarterback of the future. That's an addition. They kept Keenan McCardell. That may have been part of the Jefferson deal. Fine. Keenan McCardell's a great wide receivers coach, keeping the band together. On the defensive side, you have Brian Flores. They're looking to build something strong there. He did not get any job offers, but I don't know if he would have taken them if he did. So it is to keep your team together, right, and build upon it, takes talent. And Kwesi did that this offseason, and I think that's fantastic what he did. Absolutely what he did. And it's a good thing. I think the future for the Vikings is bright, especially once we get into this season, and then from 25, 26, I think it's, Super Bowl's the limit. And I think we can win it and bring it home finally. But we'll see. We'll see.
We will.
Daniel says he thinks KOC is guaranteed to stay. He is rated highly by the players throughout the league. Yes. And that's a possibility too. They are. I mean, you get the NFL Players Association surveys, and the Vikings are still tied for first. That's got to play into it. So we'll see. And Drew, hail to the national champs. Hopefully, we'll be singing that as we're Super Bowl champs, and eventually J.J. McCarthy's raising that trophy. But let's give Sam Darnold a chance to start off this season to see where it goes. But I think Kwesi's crushed it this offseason. Absolutely crushed it. So I agree. What a difference from when he first got here, a little hamstrung, until now. And I think part of it is, I think the Wolves took off those handcuffs they had on him. So I think it's good.
The only thing that I forgot to mention is the thing that he will get criticized for, he has gotten criticized for, is certainly he gave up a lot of 2024 draft picks and 2025 draft picks to get Turner in the roundabout way that we did. So, right. That's a move. Those are moves that are going to be scrutinized for the whole time that Dallas Turner is in the NFL, and the players that the other teams got with those draft picks. But I have no problem with what was done, even though, yes, it was pricey, but if Dallas Turner is a 10-plus sack guy and a factor for a decade, it will be, I think, the right move, even if some of the draft picks pan out on the other end. You trade should work out for both teams. Otherwise, teams won't trade, because especially if you're the team that's getting the better of the deal consistently. There was those old days with the Patriots. Nobody wanted to trade with Belichick after a while because they thought they'd get hosed all the time. Well,
right.
So, yeah.
Well, I think it just adds to the, with the Justin signing, it was the frosting on the cake so far this offseason. I think Kwesi's done a bang-up job, and we look forward to when all this starts again in training camp here in about 6 weeks. But we'll see. Now, that brings us to Theme 3. Where we're starting off with this week in Vikings land.
Yes, looking into a bit of the news and notes from the week that was in Minnesota Vikings land, and as you said at the beginning of the show, Dave, a lot of stuff went on this week. Whether it was between the Jefferson signing, the mandatory minicamp, and on it goes. And one of those things was the Vikings unveiled their third uniform. Or is it the fourth? I haven't heard if they're. I don't think they're wearing the classic uniforms this year. There's been no talk about that.
Oh, I hope they do.
Well, I hope they do
uniform
too.
In a bunch.
But yeah, but it would be. I don't know. I don't understand these things. I wouldn't be surprised if they didn't use it because they look too good or something stupid like that. But I don't know. Like third uniforms, alternate. These kind of. Third, we've got 5, right? Because we also have the Thursday nighter ones.
Yeah, I don't think I think those are retired, which is the Color Rush uniforms, what they call them, primetime purples. I think they retired those. However, I thought that was a Sharp uniform, but
yeah. Again, for me, uniforms, I'm not a big lover of the extra uniforms. That's just me. I like the classic, like I said, 1 or 2. I look at this as strictly kind of a marketing gambit by the NFL franchises, where they're just pumping out different things, different gadgets, different uniforms, so they can get the Viking rubes to buy another jersey. It's just another revenue stream for them, and so I don't have much time for it, but. Other people do, and that's fine. But I just never get excited about these things. But hey, what does everybody think about the Winter Warrior uniforms, which are going to be used on, what is it, December 15th, 16th, when we play the 15th,
the Monday Nighter against the Bears.
Yep. Yeah. They're going to be using it against the Bears. They're the Winter Warrior. I look at them and I'm kind of like, meh, there's a lot of white in there.
Well, winter white out.
Yes, I do, but for sure. I understand that the design, there's design elements to it with the gray, and there's a nod to the Vikings culture, nod to, of course, it being winter. So again, that's a lot of the white and the gray face masks. Going to be, I
I
wonder
think
if,
it's more silver than gray, but go
hmm,
ahead.
but well, feel free to correct me on the color scheme.
No, but I think it's a reflective silver versus a gray. Now they talk about it, and the whole stripe down the middle of the helmet that represents the steel band of a Vikings helmet. You have the silver, it represents the armor that they wear, whether it be chainmail or armor itself. I think it's a good tie-in, and then of course you get the Celtic knotwork across the back of the collar. It ties in the icicles Norsevius is talking about that drip off the numbers. I think it's cool, and it exudes. Some of the complaints we got this week was, oh, the uniform's cold. It's not a warm-looking uniform. Well, they took out the gold, yes, but the temperature of the whites and the silvers and the stuff is they're cold colors. When we talk about in artwork and photography, we have warm light and cold light and all this. These are cold, but they're cold to me. I think they designed it for a reason. They wanted it that way. They wanted to portray the cold. When was the last time we won and got to the Super Bowl? We played out in the cold, right? When the wind came screaming through the end zone at the old Met, and Odin was sitting there rocking, and it was freezing, and the other team is huddled around their heaters because they can't. This gives that same psychological feel. I think this is the goal of this, to give that same psychological feel to the opponents when they see us in these Winter Warrior uniforms. And I hope that's the case, because we haven't had that since we left being outside, right? We had it a little bit when we were outside playing at
TCF Stadium
in Minnesota, but we haven't had it indoors. And if that brings that indoors, I'm all for it. Bring it on.
Yeah.
And as of right now, they're only wearing it one uniform or 1 week. So it's a special thing. I think it looks sharp. I wouldn't mind having one, signed by Justin Jefferson, framed and hanging up on my wall. Hell yes. I think it's sharp, and it keeps people interested. Yes. And we do the Iceland chant with the SKOL chant. Yes, we do. And and like I said on a previous show, where do Vikings come from? They come from Northern Europe, Iceland, Sweden, Finland, Norway, Denmark, all those areas where it's cold and wintry and blustery and white and gray with ice, and bring it on, baby. Bring it on. So I like them.
Yeah, and everybody's, the whole uniform thing is very subjective, right? I'm mad. Dave's like over the moon, and that's okay. I do kind of wonder, was it the first whiteout game? Weren't the end zones white?
Yes.
And then last year they weren't.
Right, and they want to bring them back to white again. And the only thing they had to do with the white one is they had to paint the purple yard stripe.
But but these uniforms, like if I think it could go both ways, but if you're an offensive team and you're in the Vikings, you're in the red zone, could you actually see the Vikings defenders?
You got a point there. I don't know. It's going to be interesting. But
they're like, oh, I'm throwing in the end zone. No, I just threw it to Harrison Smith. Ah, dang it. Those Winter Warrior uniforms are to blame. So there might be something to this, because it could also work the other way on offense. Like, Justin Jefferson's open and you don't see him because you think it's part of the end zone. But anyway.
Hopefully our quarterback's got better eyesight than that, but we'll find out. But I think they're sharp. They're happy. It's a great marketing deal. There's going to be tons of people buy it. It's a true white helmet. We haven't had that. That's new. The taking of the gold off is new. I think they did a real classy job of how they did it. I don't think it's too Nike-ish where it looks stupid like the Atlanta Falcons uniform or something like that. I think it looks sharp.
Stealth touchdowns.
Yeah. Hey, if it works, it works.
Yeah.
Well, that brings us to tight end.
Yeah, well, the N'Keal Harry thing, we heard this week that N'Keal Harry has willingly moved. He's now a tight end instead of a wide receiver. And this actually got a lot of play amongst the throughout the NFL, even the people who don't cover the Vikings regularly, which surprised me because N'Keal Harry is a bubble guy on the roster. Very little used last year when he was with the Vikings, so I didn't think that this would catch a lot of attention, but it did, and I guess I see why. Because N'Keal Harry had, he last year he was a tight end in everything but name for the Vikings. He played in 9 games, only had 23 offensive snaps, but I didn't chart them, but I did notice when he'd be on the field because he's so damn big out at wide receiver. And every time that he was in the game that I noticed, the Vikings always called a run play. Every fucking time. He didn't catch what pass last year. He didn't even get one thrown to him, but he was in there as a blocker. So the Vikings obviously trusted him as a run blocker when they put him in there. And so this makes sense what they're doing here, moving him to tight end again, because that's basically that seemed to be what they were using him for last year, as like a big bodied wide receiver, an extra tight end. And I don't know. And N'Keal Harry, he's listed as 6'4". He's got the frame to add weight to be a tight end, and he actually has done that. Judd Zulgad said this week on a show that N'Keal Harry was listed at 225. Now, we don't know if he was actually weighed that or weighed more or weighed a little less, but N'Keal Harry now weighs 240, which is tight end weight. Maybe a little bit on the light side in these tight ends these days, but
it's 10 pounds lighter than TJ Hawkinson.
Mm-hmm. But TJ's a little taller, although TJ doesn't look as big as N'Keal Harry. But anyway, 240.
And I heard later this week on a national broadcast, he's actually up to 246 already. So, and they had told him last season they wanted to move him to tight end. So he's been working on this since the end of last season.
And so for N'Keal Harry, it's a good move for him because he's not been successful as a wide receiver, and that's possibly because he doesn't quite have the explosiveness or quick twitch fibers or whatever it is to be cornerbacks and get open on quarterbacks and leave them in the dust. But as a tight end, that's going to be less of an issue when he's got safeties and slower linebackers covering him. And he's got wide receiver chops. That's what he was drafted as. That's what he's played as a pro in college. We know we've seen him make tough contested catches. He's got good hands. We saw a couple of nice catches in preseason last year when he got signed onto the team. So I think that this is a good move for Harry. It's a good move for the Vikings. And what I really like about this move is that I don't know if it's gonna work out for Harry or the Vikings. I really if Harry makes the team as a tight end, I think that's a little bit on the iffy side right now. But kudos to the Vikings coaching staff for thinking a little bit outside the box here and taking a look at Harry and saying, well, as a wide receiver, he's probably not going to make the team or ever be an impact player for us or make an impact on the team. But this guy, he's got the body where he could be a tight end, but with wide receiver skills, let's give him a shot there. And I think that's a great recognition by our coaching staff and shows that they're thinking of ways to maximize the talent that they have in front of them. And so that's what I really like about this, is not just the Harry doing it and the potential that he might actually be a guy who can help us a little bit on offense and at the tight end position. And we're going to have need of that with TJ Hawkinson not being out for however long he's out. But the coaching staff seeing this kind of potential in players. And I think it shows that they're really focused on player development and it's worth the gamble, I think.
I do too. G-Mac asks, were there any players that have made that change from wide receiver to tight end successfully? We have one that's on the Locked On Minnesota side. That's Ron Johnson. He was a Gopher, I think it was drafted by the Ravens, as a wide receiver. They asked him to make the transition to tight end, and he did. Had it, as successful a career as you can have. He got into a second contract, but he made the transition, so it can be done. We'll see. We'll see if he can do it. I'd like it because he can catch. N'Keal can catch passes. He's a first rounder, right? As we all know, he's drafted by the Patriots at the end of the first round when he was drafted. And you give these guys second chances. And now, if he can make that transition into a pass catching tight end, it would be just like having a tight end, make it through his first rookie contract and then into a second. And that's when tight ends make that, that flip in the NFL. So if he could do that, it would be beneficial to all involved, both to N'Keal and to the Vikings. And we wish him luck and hope that he can. Otherwise, I don't think he's making the team. But hopefully he can, because he's got the size. He's got the frame to put him even on more weight too. So it's going to be good. We'll see.
Drew with the Debbie Harry joke. I love it.
That brings us to minicamp.
Yes.
We see smiles here.
Oh, yeah. All kinds of smiles.
He was happy this week.
He was. It was an expensive week for him and the other minority owners. But, he put on a brave face publicly after sliding $89 million or whatever it was into escrow. Yeah. That's funny because you talk about how your bank account goes from whatever to 85 million. How about when your bank account is minus 85 million?
It's gotta hurt.
One transaction. Yeah. Anyway, we're talking about minicamp here. The Vikings had the mandatory minicamp this week, and so there was various reports out there. Alec Lewis, Ben Gessling, all that sort of stuff. Always take these with a grain of salt, a note of caution. You can't really, it's very dangerous to read anything into these, what reports on who looked good, who didn't, what the Vikings were doing, what they weren't, because the way it was structured was that everybody, all the units are on the field, but they're working in their own positional units on their own. There was no 11 on 11 done. They did some 7 on 7 at the end of practices. And I read also that a lot of times they weren't even running at full speed when they were doing that. So
they're still doing installs.
Yes.
That's here. We're going to walk through it. Then we're going to try it at 3/4 speed. All that sort of stuff happens this time of year.
Yeah. So again, you got to take everything with a grain of salt. I think that the main takeaway that I got from everything I read was it's getting really clear right now, at least, is that and with these, I guess I should also mention that with the mandatory minicamp and with the OTAs and coming up with training camp, the main thing that most people are going to be interested in is the Vikings quarterback situation. How good is J.J. McCarthy looking? How good is Sam Darnold looking? Who's going to start for us? Well, I think it's pretty clear right now that Sam Darnold is being primed to be our starter to start the season, and if not, maybe for the entire 2024 season. He's, from what I read, he's been the most consistent. He was the most consistent in minicamp. He's making the routine throws routinely. He's showing good timing and rhythm. He's also doing a little bit of he's showing some, making some nice wow throws, touch passes, that sort of thing. J.J. McCarthy, on the other hand, has been a little bit less consistent, and that's to be expected. Darnold's a vet. He's going into a 7th season. He's done that. He's been there and done that. J.J. McCarthy has not been there and done that, and he's working on different footwork and all kinds of other little technique stuff that is not second nature to him. So not surprising, nothing to worry about that he's been a little bit less consistent than Sam Darnold and maybe even probably Nick Mullins and maybe even Jaron Hall too. But still, it seems pretty clear that right now Darnold is in the lead, the post position to start for us. And I am okay with that, Dave, because again, Kevin O'Connell has made it very clear. We said it numerous times on here. They've got a plan for J.J. McCarthy. Again, the thresholds, they've got boxes that he's got to tick before he's ready to start. And we have seen so many cases in the NFL of young quarterbacks getting ruined because they're thrown in before they are ready. The Vikings right now don't seem to be, with their plan, are not going to make that mistake. And that is the right thing to do. Now, the rubber's going to hit the road and the pressure is going to be on if Sam Darnold does start at quarterback. And if he stinks it up in multiple games and he is being seen as the reason why the Vikings are 4-6 or 3-8 or whatever they are, and everybody's going, if only Darnold wasn't the quarterback, we'd be in the playoff hunt right now. So if that starts happening, we're going to find out how much Kevin O'Connell and the Vikings front office are going to stick to the plan that they have for JJ McCarthy. Because if the fans are screaming, if the media are screaming, and they're just calling for McCarthy to get in there, we've seen other teams do that, put those rookies in when maybe they shouldn't have. Again, I don't want to see JJ McCarthy being put in the game just because. I want him to be put in there when Kevin O'Connell determines that he's ready and not a moment before. And I think that's what's being done. And I think that is the best course of action for the Vikings going forward and for JJ McCarthy going forward. He's got to earn this. He cannot have it handed to him. And the Vikings look like they are not handing it to him. And so if that means Sam Darnold is your starter for 2024, I can live with it because I like that plan of development. And we've said many times, 2024, whatever happens is gravy. 2025 is when we think that the Vikings are going to be making noise. And if they make noise this year, even better.
Yep, 100%. I don't disagree with you. I think it's absolutely right. And you talk about if you treat that rookie wrong, it can ruin him. Sam Darnold's a prime example of that. Now he's with it last year, and now this year they're trying to recover his career. And I hope they do. I hope he steps up and he balls out because he can then become the starter that people thought he was when he was originally being drafted. And that would be good for him. And if he balls out, takes us to the Super Bowl, then we can deal with that problem at the end of our celebrations and once we recover from our hangovers. Not a big deal. We'll deal with that.
And there's, we've seen it in comments below here where, some of our viewers feel pretty positive about Sam Darnold being able to play well and win, be a reason why the Vikings win football games as opposed to being the reason why they lose them. And the Sam Darnold being the Vikings starter in 2024, that is not the scenario I would have dreamed of this time last year. But if that's what it's looking like right now, I'm willing to have an open mind and see where it goes. Again, it's the Sam Darnold. He can make the throws. He is a fairly mobile guy, although he's taken a lot of sacks in his career. But so the tools are there. And now he's got other tools, better tools to work with in this situation. And it's a great situation for him. Let's see if he can take advantage of it.
I agree 100%. Let's see if he can do it. If not, he's a placeholder while, they're bringing up the young JJ McCarthy. I think the plan is a good plan, and they're sticking to the plan. And I think that's a good thing. We'll watch what the plan is in Chicago, and they're working that plan, but does it ruin their new quarterback? We'll see what the plan is in New England. Do they ruin Drake May? We're already hearing horror stories out of that. We'll see what it is in Washington. And let's see, out of all those quarterbacks drafted in the first round, who turns out best when it comes to the end? And I'm putting my money on JJ McCarthy and the Vikings plan. So I think this is a great show to end a great week in Vikings land. Any last words there, Darren?
No, we're going to be entering a bit of a dry football period here, Dave. It happens every year, but you don't have to worry. Two Old Bloggers will not be drying up. We'll be here on Sundays for you during the rest of the dog days of summer. So keep on showing up, keep on making your comments and viewing us because we love it, we appreciate it, and we appreciate you all, or y'all.
We do appreciate it. We appreciate everybody that's in the remarks. And a special shout out goes to Norris Fias. Our thoughts and prayers with you. And you know how that is. I want to thank everybody that's here tonight. I want you to have a great rest of your weekend, the rest of this Sunday. Enjoy good friends, good beverage, good family, good times, and be safe. What do we say, Darren?
We say SKOL Vikings, baby.
SKOL Vikings.
Like, subscribe, and ring the bell, and rate us on your favorite podcast aggregator. Darren and Dave, thank you for watching this episode of Two Old Bloggers. We look forward to seeing you on every show on the new Vikings First and SKOL. You can find our podcasts as part of the Fans First Sports Network. Sports takes for the fan, from the fan. SKOL, everybody!